Made man here. Y'all know how I get down. We talking boxing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to do something a little different for this particular vid. And we're going to basically go down the road of Rigo. Meaning that, I've always wondered, Guillermo Rigondeaux, as talented as he is, I call him a Jedi Master. In his last fight, we seen him stand right in front of his opponent, and his opponent couldn't lay a glove on him. And then once Rigo decided to let his hands go, pow, one punch knockout. That was great against Moises Flores, as that's his name. But the fact that I'm trying to get at is that a man as talented and skilled as Guillermo Rigondeaux, why is it that this man can't get proper paydays? Why is it that this man can't get proper fights? Why isn't Guillermo Rigondeaux a bit more popular? And I can't seem to understand that. So I decided to go into looking into the story of Rigo and into the background of Rigo. And I came up with a few conclusions myself. Now, I'm just going to tell a story here. Y'all draw your own conclusions. Y'all tell me whether it's from shady deals, shady characters, you know what I'm saying? Or just something as simple as Rigo just can't speak English. And that harms him in so many ways. Y'all draw y'all conclusions from it. I'll tell you my conclusions by the end of the story. For those of y'all who know much about Guillermo Rigondeaux, I don't know how interested y'all will be in this vid, but if you do stick around and listen to it, I ask that anything that I'm going wrong on, I ask that you steer me back in the right direction. Let's start about this, man. Fighters do a lot of crazy things for money. Money is the number one driving force behind a fighter. Nothing else. I mean, we can try to over-examine it and say, oh, it's for honor, it's for legacy, it's for that, it's for this. At the end of the day, in today's boxing, it's about money and wanting to become a prize fighter. Money makes boxers make crazy decisions, if you will, in chasing the money. Most boxers come from humble beginnings. So money is always the driving force. This is the reason why you see a lot of promoters like to reach into the poorest parts of the world, poorest countries, poorest neighborhoods to find boxers. Because not only do they have hunger, but they're much more easily to control because you can always wave money in front of them. This is where, in more recent times, we've seen fighters like my main man, Kell Brook, go up 2 weight divisions. He literally backed out of a unification fight between him and Jesse Vargas, who at the time had the WBO welterweight title. Kell Brook had the IBF welterweight title. Well, a fight was supposed to go down between him and Jesse Vargas, but it didn't go down because Kell Brook felt as though, given that the controversy of Brexit, where the UK was pulling out of the EU, Brexit occurred and it crushed the pound. And basically, Kell Brook would not have made much money against Jesse Vargas. I think they say the total figure would have came out to about, $250,000 or something like that. And basically, Jesse Vargas, who would have been paid in American dollars, would have been making more money. And he was the B-side fighter. So Kell Brook pulled out of that fight. And what did Kell Brook do? Go up 2 weight classes to face Gennady Golovkin for a much, much bigger check. Most people now, in hindsight, say that was a terrible decision by Kell Brook and he should have never done it. And Eddie Hearn should have never gave him that fight. But Kell Brook, chasing that bag, went up 2 weight classes, got his eye socket broken, unfortunately, and things ain't been right for Kell Brook ever since. Well, in today's boxing, we hear Guillermo Rigondeaux will be facing Vasyl Lomachenko. December 9th, if I recall. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's December 9th. And Guillermo Rigondeaux will be leaving 122 pounds, where he is the lineal champion, has the WBA title. He's going to skip 126, go up to 130 to face Vasyl Lomachenko. And I could not understand what reason that he would even take that sort of negotiation because, I've always said in the past that Lomachenko would not face Rigo unless Bob Arum knows there's some sort of advantage involved. Well, they've been back and forth about weight. They went back and forth about money. So a lot of us fans were arguing with one another, like, which one is it, man? Is the fight not being made over weight? Is the fight not being made over the money? I mean, what the heck is going on? And from my research, from what the bottom line that I get to, I truly believe it was about money. And we'll get to that. Hence, you see, it's rumored to say that Guillermo Rigondeaux will be making possibly $1 million in this fight. And this is according to his ex-manager, Mr. Gary Hyde. He'll be making close to $1 million, or if not $1 million in this fight, which is the biggest payday of Rigo's career. So now I understand why Rigo would take up such a big risk to go up 2 weight classes to face a very skilled fighter in Vasyl Lomachenko. According to Mr. Gary Hyde, the last really big fighter that Rigo fought was Nonito Donaire. Nonito Donaire came in there on fight night at 140 pounds. And it's said that Nonito Donaire was not nearly as good as we thought he was. And we've seen that play out. Some say Rigo even ruined Nonito Donaire. But the bottom line is, at the time, Nonito Donaire was hyped up big. Bob Arum was designing Nonito Donaire to be a pay-per-view attraction. And Rigo went in there with a much bigger man that night, but it was a hype job. Now, in Vasyl Lomachenko's case, this ain't no hype job. You're now going up to face a bigger man who is tremendously skilled, one of the best fighters in the world right now. That's a lot. That's a lot. Because Rigo, let's just do this real quick. The negotiation timeline is funny, man. But from what I recall, Loma and Rigo attempted to make the fight on social media. These are just bullet points here. Rigo agreed to face Vasyl Lomachenko. Rigo stated that he would like to face the fight to take place at 124 with the catch weight of 135. I mean, with the rehydration clause of 135. You could not rehydrate bigger than that. Vasyl Lomachenko came back, says, no dice. I am not fighting you at 124. I'm campaigning, at least at the time, at 126. Rigo says, okay, great, fine. No fight at 124. I'll fight you at 126 with a rehydration clause. Vasyl Lomachenko comes out and says, deal. Right when this thing was about to be finalized, here comes Guillermo Rigondeaux again saying that, hey, hold up, man. I don't think the money is fair. I think we could do better on the money. How about we do this? The winner gets the $1 million. We fight for low purses, and the winner gets the bulk of the money, which will be about $1 million. How do you feel about that? On social media, Vasyl Lomachenko agreed and stated that I'm all in and you'll lose. You'll lose millions. But that never came to fruition neither. Unfortunate. As according to Vasyl Lomachenko, Rigo wanted to jack the price up. According to Guillermo Rigondeaux, the offer that Vasyl Lomachenko and them sent wasn't good enough. Though I understand what fans are going to say, that was like his biggest payday at the time, so he should have took it. I think it was like $500,000 if I'm not misunderstood. Rigo says, no. Why does the champion has to come up in weight, right? Not get paid what I think I'm just due, and risk losing my titles, losing my legacy to come up and face you? You got to make the offer more intriguing. Now, this is after, I understand, this is after Rigo agreed to certain terms as far as the weight is concerned. And it looked like it was going to be good. Everything was great until Rigo wanted a rate hike. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, this brings us to now at 130, where Vasyl Lomachenko's at 130. Vasyl Lomachenko's been at 130 for a few fights, putting in work. Now, he's running low on names at 130. He's gotten Nicholas Walters out the way. He's gotten guys like Jason Sosa out the way. You know what I mean? Like, he's been sitting up there at 130. We thought we maybe possibly was going to get a Gervonta Tank Davis fight from him, but it didn't happen. And now Lomachenko is ready to go to 35. So Lomachenko is like, I'm going to try one more time to make this thing happen. Rigondeaux reaches out to him again, says, okay, what's going on? Lomachenko said the fight has to go down at 130 now. Rigondeaux agrees and says, I'll face you at 130. Bob Arum then comes out and says that Rigondeaux deserves a bigger purse. Of all the bad things that he said about Rigondeaux in the past, how he was boring, how networks didn't want to see it. This, that, and the third. And now we hear about not only ESPN will be showing this fight, but also Box Nation in the UK will be showing this fight. For people who didn't want to see it, the fight is sold out nearly 2 months out. But nobody wanted to see it. Bob Arum was been pulling our chain, man, for a while now when it comes to Rigo. And we're going to get to that. So Bob Arum even offers more money. It's rumored to say almost $1 million, if not $1 million. And this is according to the former manager of Guillermo Rigondeaux. $1 million, the biggest payday ever. And you got to ask yourself, well, I guess they have to pay the man more money, having him come all the way up to 130, no rehydration clause. This is something that he deserves to be paid for. Minimally $1 million, because they offered Orlando Salido, a fighter whom Vasyl Lomachenko was about to face prior to them making this fight. Orlando Salido, who's already beaten Vasyl Lomachenko, they offered him $750,000. So you're going to offer him $750,000. You better up that price for Rigo, right? But it is what it is. That $1 million, ladies and gentlemen, is the thing that made Rigo forget about everything he was fighting for in negotiations. Everything that everything that he needed to make this fight fair, he just disregarded for that $1 million. According to Gary Hyde, his former manager, he prefers him face Leo Santa Cruz or one of the 126 fighters. But hell, getting them in the ring has been virtually impossible for Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, I've learned through research that Rigondeaux had opportunities in the past to face your Scott Quiggs and your Carl Framptons. But there were certain things that Rigondeaux just did not want to do. The one thing that y'all got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, and even if you're a fan of Rigo sometimes can be a diva. Unfortunately, Rigo sometimes gets into diva mode. So he believes that he's the champ. He's the lineal champion. They all ran from him. He shouldn't have to go after them, fight, constantly this popping up at fights, popping up in interviews, calling them out, running in the ring and things. He don't feel like he has to do these things because he already put in work and he feels as though, hey, I don't got to do all that, man. They should be willing to fight me. I'm the champ. Rigo got to understand one thing. In boxing is a business. It's not so much how skilled you are. And we all think that you're tremendously skilled, my man. But it's about how popular you are. How many tickets you sell. How many seats you fill. That's what it's about. And I don't know if anyone around Rigo who loves him would tell him that. But you got to understand that Loma and Santa Cruz and everybody else that you wanted to fight got with respectable outfits. Meaning that they done business properly. They looked out for themselves. They didn't link up with shady characters. They didn't link up with people looking to steal their money. They didn't link up with people constantly looking to, not really push them and give them big fights and make them popular fighters. Rigo hooked up with the wrong people. And I think, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, the people who had Rigo's best interest at heart, Rigo kind of cast it to the side. Maybe there's some things about this that I don't know. But from what I'm researching here, Rigo didn't get with people who had his, I didn't think, best interest at heart. And we're going to get to that, man. When you think of the Guillermo Rigondeaux story and you look deep and you do your research, the first thing that you're going to come to is a man that, who I keep saying in this vid, by the name of Mr. Gary Hyde. Gary Hyde, former amateur boxer, businessman in Ireland. He owned a string of pubs. That's what got him on his feet to start a slew of small businesses. Gary Hyde also was managing fighters in Ireland. Now, in Ireland, we all know how the local scene is. Gary Hyde knew who the best were, and he knew who the worst were. And he also knew that there was nobody on that local scene in Ireland that he could make a star. It didn't exist. So, from what I understand, Mr. Gary Hyde was doing a boxing event with a lot of local fighters, and he had invited a guest of honor, and it was the world famous step dancer named Mr. Michael Flatley. And now, after this event was over, Michael Flatley told Gary Hyde, like, yo, man, you need a star. In which Gary Hyde told him, hey, Where am I going to get one of those? Ain't nothing like that here in Ireland. And flatly responded to him, hey, go to one of the world's poorhouses, and that's where you'll find your star. Instantly, Mr. Hyde started to think and remember a little prior to that, he had just met the Cuban Olympic team, in which he met them at one of his pubs. And the one that he remembered stood out to him so special was the little guy, Guillermo Rigondeaux. He said he was something special about him that he just couldn't kind of get over. So 2 weeks after after this particular boxing event, Gary Hyde was on the first thing smoking to Havana, Cuba. In which, when he landed in Havana, Cuba, he told the locals that his name was Miguel. Literally, Miguel. And he was there to write a book covering Cuban boxers. He was basically looking for an end to where all the good Cuban boxers was, some people that he can basically round up and smuggle up out that country. Because when you go to a poor country, and if you got some talent there, like I said earlier, you can wave money in front of them, ladies and gentlemen. You can get them to do almost anything you want. They have mouths to feed. So defecting from a country to go somewhere else to make more money is nothing to them. They're willing to do that, put their lives on the line, sleep in boats at sea, do whatever they got to do, risk their lives to make it to the promised land. And that's what Mr. Hyde was there to do. That's what he used the money, his own personal money, from the money that he made from his small businesses to fly over to Havana, Cuba. And he was looking to make deals. He was going to need plenty of money. Because when he got there, he had to put basically money on the streets to get the word out that he's looking for some fighters. He is looking for some fighters, including Guillermo Rigondeaux. Eventually, Mr. Hyde made his way to a place called La Finca. And La Finca is the school where all the amateur boxers in Cuba, well, not all, but where amateur boxers in Cuba lived and they trained. But however, when he got there, they had the gates locked. He couldn't even get in. So instead of going there, he decided to go to what's called the Rafael Trejo Gym. And that's a small outdoor gym. All you basically had there was like an alley space with a boxing ring and a few chairs around it. But however, this was the known spot for Guillermo Rigondeaux to work out. According to Mr. Hyde, it reminded him of a handball alley. Said the whole place looked like it cost maybe $500. You know what I'm saying? But like I said before, so Hyde continued to pursue things. Continue to drop money on the streets, incentivizing anybody who will pay him some attention. And basically get the word out that he's looking for top fighters. And a few days later, it's stated that Guillermo Rigondeaux wanted to set up a meeting with him at a restaurant in Havana Central Park. This was the beginning of the Rigo career. He sat down, and when he walked in, it said that he met Mr. Hyde, and Mr. Hyde said the first thing that he said to him was basically that, look, man, he wanted to basically get him into professional boxing. And basically, before Mr. Hyde can even finish the sentence, Guillermo Rigondeaux lit up like a Christmas tree and said, hey, hold up, professional boxing? Shit. But however, Guillermo Rigondeaux knew that in order for me to do that, I would have to defect from Cuba. I would have to leave Cuba because there was no professional boxing going down in Cuba. But the notion of even talking about this in a public space with Gary Hyde about defecting from Cuba, that was enough right there to get Rigo locked up, man. That was enough to not only get Rigo locked up, but also Gary Hyde locked up. They was running a major risk, and they knew it. But even though that risk, man, existed, Rigo still stayed there, man. They say he ordered several rounds of rum, and several cigarettes. And next thing you know, him and Gary Hyde was sitting in that restaurant plotting on their next moves. And this is the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the very beginning. Now, it's said at this moment, Gary Hyde started to look into ways to basically get Rigo out of the country. He looked into things like speedboats, jet skis, submarines, anything that he can get to get those fighters, because Rigo was not the only fighter that he was looking at. We're just going to laser in on Rigo here. But he had other fighters included too, including guys like Mike Perez. But anyway, he started to look into ways to get that guy off the island. All kinds of ways. And he figured, I got to take care of my guys while I'm not here in Havana. So when Hyde would go back to Ireland, he will be sending his fighters cell phones. He will be sending them debit cards. He will be sending them books with 500 euro notes glued inside. And unfortunately, I kind of skipped over this, but during this time, Guillermo Rigondeaux signed a 5-year deal with Gary Hyde. Now, peep this, ladies and gentlemen. He signed authorizing Hyde to manage it and promote him for 5 years. And he was going to pay Gary Hyde 25% of his earnings. And this includes the TV rights and endorsement deals. So basically, Gary Hyde was getting 25% of everything that Guillermo Rigondeaux does for the next 5 years or more. And we'll get into that. That is a hell of a deal for at least Gary Hyde. I mean, 25% of everything that Guillermo Rigondeaux does. This is not even talking about a promoter yet. We're talking about a manager. That's crazy. Well, anyway, Hyde was taking care of his guy, sending them all kinds of stuff, even sending books with 500 euros in it, man. And he tried to figure out the best way to get them dudes out of Cuba. The best way that he thought, and that basically fell in his lap, was get them out through Mexico. You know what I'm saying? It's stated that there's a province in Mexico called Pinar del Rio, and it's famous for making cigars. And at this particular province, they board people, they smuggle people on large speedboats. We're talking 20 to 40 people at a time. And also drug traffickers use this same way to bring shit into the United States. They run all kind of risks, arrest, kidnapping. The Cuban military can get them, whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? But if they succeed, they got to land 200 miles away in Cancun. That's a long trip. That is a long, long trip. And that's the only way that they can basically make it to the promised land. So Hyde knew if he can get his people to Cancun, then he was going to have to find some Cubans there in Cancun who then can take them from there and kind of, look out for them, kind of get them through there. You know what I'm saying? So what does Gary Hyde do? He camps out in Cancun. He takes a taxi. He tells the taxi driver, I'm looking for Cubans. Straight like that. The taxi driver told him some sort of method to know how to spot Cubans. And they walk a certain kind of way like that. But, I didn't want to do that because, thank goodness, the taxi driver had a friend of a friend, and they was able to locate a Cuban. And this Cuban was in the music industry, according to Gary Hyde. And they said that this guy would come to see Gary Hyde. He would bring his wife. He would bring his daughter. He said the dude was a constant drunk. He'd come to his hotel room, raid his minibar, already drunk, and take all his liquor with him. You know what I'm saying? But however, after a few days, he says, hey, comes back to Gary Hyde and say, I can deliver your boxer from Cuba. And that began the transition at that point. Now, while Hyde was putting all this stuff together, Guillermo Rigondeaux was still at home in Havana, Cuba. Though he was getting a little something from Gary Hyde, it wasn't enough because Guillermo Rigondeaux, like I stated earlier, came from humble beginnings, grew up on a coffee farm. And he had a pretty big family. You know what I'm saying? A very big family. And he had two parents, a father, and his father was a strong supporter of the Cuban Revolution. He had 8 brothers and sisters. He had a loyal wife. He had a son, a 5-year-old son, and a 15-year-old stepson. And if he was to leave at that time, he would risk losing all of them. But however, on the inside of Rigo, he was fighting with the notion that being a champion in Cuba means nothing. They treat you like a dog. They don't treat you with respect. They don't treat you with admiration or love. They treat you like a dog. You'll be left on these street corners telling stories about how you used to be a star, how you were on your way to being a great boxer. But that's as far as it gets. So he was wrestling. He was going through his pull and tug. You know what I'm saying? Now, while Rigondeaux was back home wavering the decision whether to leave or not, Gary Hyde decided to test his route. The route that he worked out with the smugglers in Cuba and with the rooters in Cancun. He decided to test this thing out. And the boxer that he used was Mike Perez. Mike Perez takes the route. He leaves the island of Cuba. Right before they get to Cancun, they had to stop and be at sea for 3 days because a Mexican Navy vessel pulled up and parked right there off the coast. So they had to literally sit in the middle of the sea for 3 days with nothing, getting ate alive by bloodthirsty mosquitoes. And then once that boat got out the way and the smugglers was able to deliver Mike Perez to Cancun, well, they attempted to call Gary Hyde for payment and they couldn't get him on the phone. And at this point, they threatened to kill Mike Perez. It said that they said to them, Mike Perez was nothing but a rabbit. They will kill him right then and there on the spot. They pleaded with him to get Gary Hyde on the goddamn phone so you can be paid. At this time, Gary Hyde was on his way from, I believe, Mexico to Ireland. Wow. So it was actually kind of, I'm sorry, he was going from Ireland to Mexico. And so, you know, that's why they couldn't reach him at the time. But however, Gary Hyde landed in time to arrange that the smugglers be paid. You know what I'm saying? Wow. Not to mention, Gary Hyde had to pay these dudes about $200,000 to get Perez out. It was a hell of an investment. It was a hell of a price. But Gary Hyde knew he had talent on his hands, and he knew what he was going to do once he got that talent into professional boxing. And it stated that it cost him about $300,000 total to get Guillermo Rigondeaux officially delivered to the promised land. Damn. Now, at this time, I like to talk about another guy. His name is Ahmed Honor, and he was a brawler. You know what I mean? A real aggressive dude, a German dude. Wore a lot of cologne. You know what I'm saying? Even was a pro fighter at one time. Arranged a record of 16-5-2 as a pro boxer. But he was a rough dude. He also worked as a bodyguard, a debt collector, a bouncer at a brothel. He was quoted as saying how guys would come in there, fall in love with the ladies, and the only way he can get them out is if he threw them out. People would come with 2 or 3 cousins and he'd knock them all out. He was a rough dude. And like I said, at one time, even a pro boxer. From what I understand, he campaigned at middleweight and at light heavyweight. And after that was over, he launched a promotional company and he called it Arena Box Promotion. Started it in 2006. So he was just like Gary Hyde looking to recruit some good fighters as well. And he had his eyes on Cuba. You know what I'm saying? So, that's how he is. He had his big break in, I think, 2006. The Cuban national boxing team went to Venezuela to train, and at that time, he plucked off 3 of them. You know what I'm saying? Including Odalana Solis. He plucked off 3 of them, and Odalania Solis was a heavyweight, Olympian heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? Plucked them off. This was awesome. So I never knew how these Olympic Games were such heavy recruiting grounds for a lot of people. I mean, I knew that, of course, everyone wanted to go win this and this, but I didn't know they went through the measures of smuggling boxes, of having boxes defect from their countries and stuff like that. I didn't know they went through those extents. I didn't know they went through those extensions. But I guess you learn something new every day. Real talk. Also, one of the people who attempted to defect with this guy owner was Yorkis Gamboa. And he used the money that he won from the Olympic, or the trophy he sold his Olympic prize, for $1,500. And that helped him get here. But that's not here nor there. It's kind of crazy. So back to Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, Rigondeaux at this point is wrestling. Though he knows he won't be nothing in Cuba, but he knows he just cannot leave his family because of what may happen. So he was just fighting with that decision like the whole time. You know what I'm saying? Now, while Rigo was still in Cuba wrestling with the decision, Mike Perez had made it to Gary Hyde. Like I told y'all earlier, he made it. And Gary Hyde says when he had Mike Perez come up to the hotel, he put him in a jacuzzi. You know what I mean? And he said he just couldn't help but to observe Mike Perez and notice that his bald black head was just dipping in and out of the white suds, and it just made him sit back and go, wow. He just wanted to kiss the guy because it was such an achievement. He had smuggled a boxer from Cuba all the way to a safe place. And now he was going to put this guy into professional boxing, and he was going to make a bunch of money. Because I'm sure the same type of deal that he had on Rigo, he had on Mike Perez. I'm sure. Now, at this time, Rigo is still back home. Now, Rigo at this time is being approached by different promoters. He's fighting for scraps now at this time, take in mind. So he's not really making big money, but Hyde is still sending him money. You know what I'm saying? To keep him afloat, if you will. And it seems as if Hyde didn't know it at the time. But like I said, other managers and promoters, they was trying to get Rigondeaux also. And like a lot of fighters in Cuba, man, Rigo didn't know nothing about contracts. You know what I mean? He knew nothing about personal finance. You know what I mean? He didn't know how to say no because in Cuba, the authority figures in Cuba don't take no for an answer. So saying no by Guillermo Rigondeaux was hard for him to do. It was later said that Guillermo Rigondeaux signed more contracts than he gave out autographs. He was just signing. It's just crazy. So Hyde attempts to smuggle Rigondeaux out now. He sets it all up. Like, hey, man, I got a speedboat ready to rock for you, man. All you got to do is get on that boat. You know what I'm saying? And you straight up to the promised land. However, Guillermo Rigondeaux had other plans. He was going to go to the Pan American Games in Rio de Janeiro, July of 2007. And while there is where he was going to attempt to leave. He was going to do this with also fellow Cuban fighter Erislandy Lara. Both of them left what's called the Athletes Village, where they were staying. They left together. They went to a club called I'm sorry about this one. Discoteca. And it was a nightclub. And while they were at this nightclub, they met with representatives of Arena Promotions, the promotional company of Mr. Honor. And it's like, huh? They met with people there at the particular club. And at this particular club, the Arena representatives, they tried to plot Arislandi Laura and Rigondeaux's escape. So the next day, of course, neither one of the dudes showed up for their fight. And for the next 2 weeks, those Arena promotional people, they were moving Laura and Rigondeaux around from safe house to safe house to safe house. First a local hotel, then the city of Natiro, then in the coastal town of Aruruma. I can't pronounce these cities, I'm sorry. While all of this was going on, Owner's lawyer in Germany was finalizing the final paperwork to get them out of there. Now, at that time, Castro, he was raging against the German mafia, is what he called them. He was against the international money stealing of Cuban boxers. The thing about Fidel Castro, ladies and gentlemen, is that, and the Cuba, just the whole Cuban culture in general, though they don't treat their boxers with tremendous respect, they value them and they want to keep them. You got to understand, these boxers go through a Cuban school, which they are taught certain disciplines, certain parts of the art form, and they want to keep that in Cuba as much as possible. So when Rigo and Laura popped up gone, the Cuban officials started to say it was a missing persons case. They heightened the security around the Pan American Games. And during this time, two of Arena Promotions representatives, they were stopped at the Rio airport. While they were stopped at the Rio airport, police, they had picked up Arislandi Laura and Guillermo Rigondeaux while they were walking along the sands of this particular city, Aruruma. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? But they got picked up on August 2nd of that year. They were allowed to call their families. Their families were persuading them to not defect and come back home, so there won't be too much of a punishment there. When they went back home, Arislandi Laura went back to his apartment, which he had nothing in it but a computer. You know what I'm saying? It turns out that Fidel Castro really liked Arislandi Laura. He gave him a computer, because the year prior to that, Laura had just won a title. So Fidel Castro held Laura in high regard. He gave him a nice place, but he didn't give him a phone. So he couldn't call nobody. When Rigondeaux got home, his car was gone. He had, by winning the gold in the Olympics, his reward was a Mitsubishi Lancer. It's the same kind that was in the Fast and the Furious. And they took his car, but they let him keep his house. And he, according to Rigo, the only reason that he was allowed to keep his house was because he had a wife and kids living there. And if he didn't have them, they would have taken his house too. Or taken his house too. Damn. Now, after all of this happened, Rigo was broken. Broken, man. Miserable and broken. They said he was sitting on his balcony, chain smoking, back to back to back to back, trying to figure out a way to progress himself, get himself back right. He said none of his friends would speak to him. No one would talk to him. He went through a real rough time. People would pretend to not know who he was. Friends couldn't shake his hand. Because if they did, and they were seen associating with Rigondeaux, they would have been sanctioned also. Damn. He couldn't box no more. Damn. He got sidelined from the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Damn. And he was just drinking. Just drinking, man. They asked him during that time, because he had gold teeth during that time. Where'd you get them? This is in 2008. Where did you get these gold teeth? And according to Rigo, well, hey, he melted his Olympic medals and he put them in his mouth. That's how he felt about the Olympics. So, he was basically sanctioned. He couldn't do nothing in Cuba. And by him being in such a bad position in Cuba at this time, this pushed Rigo to try to defect again. Of course, if you're sitting in the country, you got no hope, you're going to think of a way out. And this is exactly what Guillermo Rigondeaux did. So, word of this got back to Gary Hyde. And this was welcomed by Gary Hyde, despite the fact that Gary Hyde had already at this point found out that Rigo was attempting to sign with other promoters and other managers and, signing this deal, that deal, this deal. Gary Hyde still didn't trip. He just knew that if he can get Rigo out, he can get all that taken care of. So, he was aware of the contract that Rigo had signed with Arena Promotions. He was fully aware of that. He was fully aware of the fact how Arena Promotions tried to get him out of Rio de Janeiro. If the officials would have never stopped the Arena representatives at the airport, they could have got Lauren Rigo out of there. So Gary Hyde was hip to everything that basically went down. But he still decided to make an attempt to get Rigo out of Cuba. Wow. He even went so far as to get Rigo a working permit in Ireland and had a boat on standby 24 hours a day when it's time for them to roll out. You know what I'm saying? When it's basically time for them to roll out. So, in November of 2008, Gary Hyde said he sent Rigo some more money. He sent them a few thousand euros. Now, at this time, Gary Hyde, though, was getting what's called a itchy feeling, and he felt something funny was going on because he wasn't really 100% sure that Rigo wouldn't attempt to get with someone else. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't sure. He just really wasn't sure. And so Gary Hyde instructed his rooters, the people to sneak Guillermo Rigondeaux out of Cuba, make sure you get this guy. Make sure you get this guy. And they told him, yo, if Jesus Christ is here, he won't get Rigo. You set us up with Rigondeaux, and he is coming to you, according to the smugglers. Now, during this time in 2008, Mr. Honor got word of this thing too. Like, oh, Rigo trying to roll out. Oh, snap. So, of course, Rigo had already signed an agreement with Arena Promotions. So Mr. Arno said, hey, if you want to still leave, I'm going to still try to get you up out of here. Shoot. So, but however, Mr. Arno did not want to rely on just the documents that Rigo had already signed up to that point. Clearly, there must have been some loopholes or something in there. Or it wasn't done right. Because Arno didn't want to rely on those documents. So he sent another Arena employee and told him to get the signature on a new contract. And like I said before, they said Rigo signed more contracts than he did autographs. So one day in early 2009, Rigo was playing with his young son and he told his wife, yo, I'm leaving. I'm going to go to the city of Santiago in Cuba. And instead, he went west. And he went there with 3 other boxers. And they got on a speedboat. And this speedboat was ran by the brother of another smuggler. And this smuggler was named the Caribbean Queen, which was actually a dude. But he dressed up as a female to keep the Mexican authorities from shooting him. You know what I'm saying? And he rolled with them. And they made it all the way to Cancun. And from there, they was taken to the U.S. border where they jumped over the fence and they told the guards, hey, man, they wanted to defect to America. This was Gary Hyde's worst fear. Because, ladies and gentlemen, though Rigo used the speedboat that was set aside by Gary Hyde, he used this boat with someone else's money. You get what I'm going? So now things are all shaking up. So Rigo's now here in America. And it turns out when Rigo arrived here in America, the guy Honor of Arena Promotions, well, he arranged for the group that brought Rigo here to have him meet with a local Miami promoter by the name of Caribe Promotions. Caribe Promotions, and they still co-promote Rigondeaux to this day. Now, according to Gary Hyde, this promotional company basically had Rigo under a bad deal at the time. And it's also stated that the people that brought Rigondeaux to this promotional company also attempted to manage Rigo, in which this forced Gary Hyde to file an injunction down in Miami, in which he basically, attempted to stop the fight. Now, Hyde wanted Rigondeaux to adhere to the contract that he signed it earlier. And in April of 2010, a circuit court judge ruled in Hyde's favor. This then pushed Hyde's contract with Rigondeaux legal up until September 15th of 2015. Now, the guy Honor, he was going through his own drama because back in Germany, the investors of Arena Promotions was starting to get a little itchy, man. They looking at Honor like, and they put basically, they wanted to control his spending. So they put spending controls on Honor. And he didn't like that very much. You know what I'm saying? And so a power struggle broke out. During this power struggle, 2 gunmen fired 3 shots at Honor, and while he was leaving his Hamburg office, you know what I'm saying, in Germany. One of the bullets hit him once in the leg, and he since had that bullet removed. And this attack went unsolved by the authorities. According to Honor, it could be the Cubans, but he just don't know. Nobody had the balls to call me and to tell me. Now, also during that time, prosecutors have been after Honor for a few years. They charged him with things like instigating a brawl at a Hamburg match, trying to blackmail a rival promoter for 500,000 euros. And he did that in February of 2010? Honor took a deal for 16 counts of extortion and assault, giving him a 22-month suspended sentence and a $120,000 euro fine. Wow. So Honor had his own share of problems himself, which I'm sure hurt the contract between them and Guillermo Rigondeaux. So that basically brings Guillermo Rigondeaux to American boxing. And he's basically been a professional ever since. Now, since that time, him and his former manager, you notice I say former manager Gary Hyde, they had their shares of ups and downs. Now, Gary Hyde, Caribe Promotions was pushing a fight with a guy named Ricardo. Hold on, what's the guy's last name? Marijuana, that's right. Ricardo Marijuana. And in this particular fight, Gary Hyde would not allow Rigondeaux to go on and fight this fight. And Rigondeaux pleaded with Hyde to allow him to take this fight, as he really wanted to take this fight. And so Hyde told him, hey, man, I'll let you take this fight if you let me see that promotional deal that you signed down in Miami. So Rigo said deal. And this is when Gary Hyde found out that Rigo had signed a 3-fight deal, and he would have received a total of $450,000 for three fights, and the contract was for 18 months. The promoter could extend for a further 18 months if he wished, with no bonus being paid to Rigo. And these people gave Rigo $100,000 advance, ladies and gentlemen. I repeat, advance, which means he had to pay that back. And they told him that it was a signing bonus. Damn. So when Hyde read this contract, he said he was disgusted, man. He was disgusted how they was exploiting Rigondeaux. And so Hyde got the promoter to terminate that contract, and then he renegotiated a new contract with Top Rank, which guaranteed Rigo a minimum of $1.8 million for 3 fights in 18 months with no extension. I repeat, no extension. So it was a better deal. At this time now, Caribe became the co-promoter of Guillermo Rigondeaux, sharing the promotional rights for 3 fights or 18 months with Top Rank Promotions. Now, it wasn't an easy transition, though, ladies and gentlemen. What do I mean by that? Well, quite honestly, it took Caribe Promotions to sue Top Rank Promotions because, according to them, they negotiated with Rigondeaux without their knowledge, behind their backs. And they have the worldwide rights to negotiate all of Rigondeaux's fights. That's the contract that Rigondeaux signed. And they attempted to sue Top Rank over this. And so Top Ranks broke down, and then that's when they allowed to co-promote Guillermo Rigondeaux. They co-promoted Guillermo Rigondeaux with Caribe. And then Rigondeaux was allowed to go on and face Murderquan for a purse of $175,000. Now, that was nothing compared to the deal that was worked out by Gary Hyde with Top Rank Promotions for $1.8 million. Because the way the contract was broke down, the first fight of the new contract was supposed to be in December of 2012. But his opponent couldn't make them fight because of some medical reasons. So this is when Guillermo Rigondeaux went on to face Nonito Donaire on April 13th of 2013, in which Rigo got $750,000 for that fight. Caribe took 20% off the top. You know what I'm saying? Off the top. Rigo then, now I want you to remember this, ladies and gentlemen. Caribe took 20% of that $750,000. Gary Hyde had a deal in place with Rigondeaux where he got 25%. So 25% going to Hyde, 20% going to his promoter, co-promoter, Caribe. Then Rigo fought his second fight, and that was a Top Rank contract, and he fought against Joseph Agbico, in which Rigo got paid $525,000, with Caribe once again getting 20% off the top, and Gary Hyde getting his percentage. Rigo fought the third fight of the contract against Kokichim in Macau, China, and he got $525,000 for that fight, with Caribe once again getting 20% on top. Damn. So then that at this present time, let's take in mind, ladies and gentlemen, prior to this, Rigo had fought for the WBA interim title. And the guy he also had fought at that time was a Top Rank fighter. And when Rigo beat this guy, Top Rank and HBO said they never wanted to see Rigondeaux again. This is until Rigondeaux actually won the actual WBA title. And then Rigo became much more appealing, according to Gary Hyde, to HBO and Top Rank. So it took for him to actually become champion before Bob Arum and Top Rank would actually sign Rigondeaux. But when he beat one of their fighters, they were pissed off at Rigondeaux. So now they got the WBA champion in Rigondeaux here. And they put him in there with Nonito Donaire, who they were grooming to be a pay-per-view star. Rigo beats him. Beats him bad. You know what I'm saying? Makes Donaire look like a hype job, if you will. I mean, bad. Beat him bad. And after that, he also took out Joseph Ibeco. Like, that's another one that Bob Arum had high hopes for. So Rigondeaux had effectively took down two guys that were notable names in Bob Arum's stable. But he didn't do it in devastating fashion. He did it in technical savvy fashion, which also pissed off HBO. So now he got HBO and Bob Arum of Top Rank pissed off at him for whatever reason. I'm guessing they expected Rigo to lose. This is why Nonito Donaire came in at 140 pounds that night, ladies and gentlemen. They were expecting him to lose. So the deal's over with Top Rank now. Rigo's got his money. He's paid out all of these entities. Ain't no telling how many, during this time, he had no specific trainer. He trained very, very briefly with Freddie Roach 12 days before a title fight, which Freddie Roach found to be very unfair. Freddie Roach also was on record as saying that Guillermo Rigondeaux is the most talented fighter he's ever seen. And it's just messed up. He had no home, if you will. He had no guy. He didn't have that one guy. So you fast forward a little bit. The Top Rank thing is out the picture. Top Rank is now Salty Grapes. HBO is Salty Grapes. Rigo is not a big crowd pleaser. There were even certain fights where people were walking out on Rigo's fights. So he wasn't a big ratings grabber. And Top Rank knew that he was just way too technical savvy to attract other big fighters to get in the ring with him. And he's already wrecked a couple of his fighters in his stable. So, of course, Top Rank wasn't happy neither. So, moving right along to July of 2014, and it turns out that Mr. Gary Hyde attempted to negotiate a contract then with Rock Nation, where Rigo will earn $1.8 million in 12 months. But, however, Rigo refused to sign the deal. This is when things started to change for Rigo. Rigo started to go into a do-nothing mode. This is when we stopped seeing Rigo for a while. And the reason it was said to do such is because Rigo did not want Gary Hyde as his manager anymore. So he figured he'd sit out the last, year or so of the contract and not fight and not do nothing. Let the contract end and then move on to a new manager. At this time, there was already someone else in the ear of Guillermo Rigondeaux. And this someone else, ladies and gentlemen, was a man by the name of Alex Borgnote. And Alex Borgnote is currently Guillermo Rigondeaux's manager. This guy's a former Bills bondsman, real slick guy. It said that he was one of the guys who got into the ear of Rigondeaux while he was in Miami. This guy also attempted to buy out Gary Hyde's contract with Rigondeaux, but Gary Hyde refused, stating that he had invested too much time and money into Rigondeaux to give him up now. So was this the guy that Gary Hyde filed the injunction against that brought him to Caribe Promotions? You got to make you wonder. Now, during this time after the Top Rank debacle, Gary Hyde stated that, he brought Rigondeaux numerous of offers. I repeat, numerous of offers. And Rigo turned them all down, refusing to fight. And according to the contract that he signed with Rigo, if Rigo refused the offers from his manager, basically, then the manager can extend the contract. That's what he said. But, however, that didn't take place. But anyway, according to Gary Hyde, he bought Frank Warren wanted Rigo for $1.8 million for 3 fights. And in year 2, he was going to pay him $2.1 million. That's $700,000 per fight, ladies and gentlemen. And he will also give Rigondeaux more if he fought Carl Frampton. Well, I thought Rigo wanted to fight Frampton. And it turns out that Frank Warren was offering Frampton. But Rigo turned it down, according to Gary Hyde. Golden Boy offered Rigondeaux a deal of over $1 million. This could have possibly at that time lined up a fight with Leo Santa Cruz. Rigo declined. Gary Hyde said he brought this guy numerous. He even brought him a fight in Japan with a guy in Japan that was worth very, very good money. Rigo declined. Rock Nation, $1.8 million for 12 months. Rigo declined. Now, according to Rock Nation, they withdrew their demands because they could not deal with Caribe's demands. They withdrew their offer, because they could not deal with Rigondeaux's promoter, Caribe, the type of demands that they were offering. Caribe is a tough cookie. They monitors Rigondeaux very close. They monitors him very, very close. This is the reason why they sued Top Rank when Top Rank attempted to sign Rigondeaux, and Caribe stated that this was done behind their backs, and they have the sole rights to basically promote Rigondeaux's fights worldwide. They have that sole right. At the time, they had that sole right. And now Top Rank, if you want a piece, y'all going to have to share it with us. And so any promotional company that wants to get next to Rigondeaux will have to go through Caribe. And that's the type of deal that he has in place now. He's co-promoted by Rock Nation, but he's also co-promoted by Caribe. That still stands. To make a long story shorter, Gary Hyde was kicked out. Even though he brought offer after offer after offer to Rigondeaux, he was kicked out. Maybe Rigondeaux didn't like the fact that this guy was getting 25% of everything he did. You know? So Gary Hyde was kicked out. And I'm not too sure of the structured deal between Rigondeaux and Rock Nation that it is as of today. I've seen a lot of print on it, but nothing really from an official source that I trust. I've heard things like 4 years of $10 million. I've heard other offers as low as that as $5 million. I've heard $2 million. I've seen different offers. And so maybe somebody who has more knowledge about that can put that in the comment section. But the point that I tried to make from telling this story, ladies and gentlemen, is that Guillermo Rigondeaux has always followed the money. Always followed the money because he comes from humble beginnings. He's taking care of a family. He feels as though he's here in America by himself. And so what Guillermo Rigondeaux decision making is based upon is money. Not to mention he has characters around him that they know that he's not good with contracts. They know that he ain't good with, things like, personal finances and stuff like that. So they sucker him into a lot of deals, man. And it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. I don't know if Rigondeaux found out Gary Hyde to be some sort of thief or stealing from him, because I don't understand why Rigondeaux would dismiss a guy who comes out of nowhere and pulls Rigondeaux out of Cuba, brings him to America, gives him a future, gives him a career, and gives him a name. Because Gary Hyde guided him all the way through that WBA title. So I don't know what went down behind the scenes. There ain't much print on it, except the fact that Rigondeaux was extremely unhappy with Hyde in the end. And it chose him, and it forced him to sit out, not take offers, not take fights, not take promotional agreements, because he did not want to go through Gary Hyde. And now you see today, where Guillermo Rigondeaux is going up 2 weight classes to face Vasyl Lomachenko. And at this particular time and point, through all the decision making that Guillermo Rigondeaux has made, he don't have many big name fighters in front of him. He don't have a lot of guys that he can get in the ring with to make a nice amount of money. Not to mention he has a lot of hands in his pocket. So this is the reason why Rigondeaux needs the money. And if he's going to put everything on the line that he's worked this point for to go up 2 weight classes, he wants to be, he wants a certain level of respect for it. Truth be told, Rigo deserves more than this. But I understand that boxing is a business. And Rigondeaux has to, he has to sell tickets. He has to sell seats. He's not a pay-per-view attraction. So I get these things. But he is such a skilled fighter that I wish somebody would treat this man with more respect. Real talk. We seen Al Heyman giving Earl Spence a purse of $3.5 million for his upcoming fight with Lamar Peterson. And most fight fans feel as though that's a loyalty gesture to show that, I haven't been giving you what you want, But guess what? I made you a world champion, and I'm going to put this in your pocket and just to show you that I got your back. Well, I wish somebody, I repeat, somebody would do that with Guillermo Rigondeaux. And according to Gary Hyde, who seemingly had the best interest of Guillermo Rigondeaux at heart, he feels as though this fight with Vasyl Lomachenko was a mistake. It's a huge mistake. The people that are working with Rigo don't care about his legacy. They don't care about any of that. They just want to make money. And with the decision that Rigo made, giving up all of his demands, the catch weight, the rehydration, gave it all up to go up 2 weight classes to fight a very, very skilled fighter, someone who will possibly wreck his name. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all I got to say to you is just like Deion Sanders told us one time, must be the money. To the next video, Main Man Made Man. Don't forget to subscribe. Twitter, Made Man 511. Facebook, Main Man Made Man Boxing Forum. Google Plus, Main Man Made Man. Yo, if y'all have sat through this long video, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. For those who hung around on this, I appreciate it. This is unlike no other vid I've ever done before. Longest vid on my channel. Easy, hands down. Sorry for such a long vid, man, but I really wanted to talk about this. I'm not expecting this to do crazy numbers. I'm just expecting for a handful to hear this, but that's good enough for me. Hopefully they spread the word, because I just really believe that Guillermo Rigondeaux deserves his respect. And since he's been here, he hasn't gotten it. He hasn't gotten it from networks, promoters, certain managers, certain entities. He hasn't gotten it. So the least that we can do is put out rightful information about this guy. So hopefully he gets respect from the fight fans. Got nothing against Vasyl Lomachenko, and I didn't cover him much in this fight. I'll do a prediction video in the future, but Vasyl Lomachenko was much more known than, say, Guillermo Rigondeaux. And quite honestly, with the very few fights that Loma has, that really shouldn't be the case. But it is what it is. To the next video. Peace out.